What happens when a woman whose entire public identity is built on warmth, empathy, and morning show sunshine finds herself sitting across from a guest who seems determined to turn every gentle question into a confrontation? On this special, intimate edition of Today Sit Down, Hoda Kotb expected difficult topics, honest reflections, maybe even a vulnerable moment or two. What she did not expect was to be talked down to, dismissed, and openly challenged on her own set by Meghan Markle. And by the time the cameras stopped rolling, viewers would be arguing over a single question: had the unflappable Hoda finally met the one guest she couldn't keep smiling for? The studio chosen for the interview was designed to feel safe and inviting, almost like a friend's living room. Two soft armchairs faced one another across a small round table. A deep blue tray on the tabletop caught warm light from above, reflecting softly against pale wood shelves lined with simple vases, minimalist line art, and green trailing plants. Everything about the space whispered calm, openness, and conversation. Between the chairs, two slim podcast-style microphones hung suspended, angled to capture every breath, every shift, every unguarded moment. Hoda sat on the left, dressed in a grey blazer over a crisp white blouse, wide-legged patchwork denim flowing over her crossed legs. She inhaled slowly, the kind of breath you take before stepping into cold water, and greeted the camera with her familiar, steady smile. "Good evening, everybody," she began, the warm cadence that had carried millions of viewers through years of mornings. "Tonight, we're doing something a little different. A special in-depth conversation. No studio audience, no panel, just a one-on-one." Her eyes drifted toward the woman seated across from her. "Joining me is Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, actress, mother, advocate, and someone whose story has sparked conversation all over the world." Meghan sat tall in her cream-colored armchair, dressed in a black turtleneck and tailored ivory trousers. Her dark hair fell in glossy waves over one shoulder. She didn't smile. She smirked, just enough to look like a challenge rather than a greeting. "Why," she said with a small nod, "thanks for organizing all of this." "We're glad you're here," Hoda replied, widening her smile. The red tally light glowed. They were live. Hoda folded her hands gently over her knee and began with an open, almost soft question, the kind meant to let a guest settle in. "You and Harry have been in the US for a few years now. How does it feel to wake up in California, sun shining, kids running around, knowing your life is so different from what it was in London?" Meghan exhaled sharply through her nose, as though she'd just been mildly insulted. "How does it feel?" she repeated, lifting her brows. "That's a little reductive, isn't it?" Hoda blinked. "Reductive, how so?" Meghan shifted, hands beginning to move as she spoke. Her tone was measured but edged. "It assumes the most interesting thing about my life is geography. England, California, these are labels on a map. I'm not a postcard, Hoda. I didn't move from one pretty picture to another. I transformed my life." She smiled, but her eyes never warmed. "I think people love asking how does it feel, because it's easier than understanding why someone would walk away from a broken system." The corners of Hoda's smile faltered. "Barely. I hear you," she said gently. "But a lot of people watching are just wondering about something human, waking up to a quieter life, away from the palace press office, the royal schedule." Meghan cut in sharper now. "You mean away from the scrutiny? Let's call it what it is." Hoda lifted a hand, open, inviting. "Okay? Away from the scrutiny." Meghan nodded as if awarding a point. "It feels," she said, leaning back and crossing one leg over the other, "like I finally get to be myself without asking permission or apologizing for existing. I don't wake up thinking, oh, I'm in California. I wake up thinking, thank God I'm not there anymore." People who romanticize the palace have no idea what it's like to be devoured from the inside out. The words hung like smoke. Hoda chose careful ground. "When you say devoured from the inside out, do you mean the institution, the press, or?" "Yes," Meghan snapped, cutting her off. "All of it. It's all connected. And honestly, I'm tired of dissecting it for people who've already decided what they believe." For the first time, a flash of something, disappointment, irritation, passed behind Hoda's eyes. "Still," she said calmly, "you agreed to sit down with us, and there are people listening who will hang on your words. You're not obligated, but you are choosing to share." "I'm sharing on my terms," Meghan replied. "Not the palaces, not the tabloids, and certainly not breakfast televisions." Breakfast television. The phrase landed like an insult. Hoda steadied her voice. "All right," she said lightly. "Let's talk about those terms." She adjusted her microphone. In your first big interview after stepping back, you said you felt unheard, unsupported, even unsafe. Looking back now, is there anything you wish you'd said differently? The question was gentle, generous even. Meghan's expression chilled. You mean, she said slowly, do I regret telling the truth? Hoda shook her head gently. No, that's not what I... But Meghan didn't let her finish. Because that's what people really mean when they ask. Do you wish you'd said it differently? She continued, her voice smooth, but threaded with unmistakable disdain. They're asking whether I would have been quieter, softer, more palatable. Whether I'm sorry that people were uncomfortable. She tilted her head, eyes fixed unblinking on Hoda's. I'm not sorry. The room somehow felt smaller after that, its warm wood panels and softly lit shelves closing in, shrinking the air between the two women. Hoda rested her elbows lightly on the arms of her chair, leaning in just enough to show engagement but not concession. I don't think anyone's asking you to be palatable, she said evenly. I think they're asking whether time has changed any part of how you view what happened. Sometimes we all look back and think, I wish I'd framed that another way. Meghan gave a short, humorless laugh. That's the difference between you and me, Hoda. You're trained to frame things. I'm done packaging my experiences to keep everyone else comfortable. There it was again. A jab wearing the costume of diplomacy. For a beat, Hoda said nothing. The camera cut to a wide shot that captured both women, the table between them, the microphones hanging like motionless pendulums, the blue tray sitting between them like a silent referee. Behind the lens, a producer shifted, feeling the tension ripple across the set. Hoda inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Let's talk about Harry for a moment, she said, a gentle pivot toward safer ground. A lot of people see the two of you as a team, navigating these big decisions together. When you look at him now, outside the royal framework, what are you proudest of in his journey? It was an invitation to warmth, to humanity. Meghan's answer landed like a reprimand. Harry's not a project, she said sharply. He's not a charity case I rescued from some tragic narrative. I didn't say he was, Hoda replied softly. No, Meghan conceded. But that's how many people frame it. Oh, look at Harry, finally free because of her. She mimicked the tone with a cool precision. As if he didn't have agency. As if he didn't choose this. Her gaze hardened. He chose me. He chose our family. And people underestimate him when they cling to the idea that he was dragged into a better life. Hoda nodded, trying once more. So, what are you proudest of? Meghan hesitated, then shrugged. That he walked away. That he stopped living for people who only ever wanted to control him. That he stopped playing the mascot in someone else's institution. She paused, then added, You don't clap for someone for leaving an unhealthy relationship. You just support them. Or you don't. Either way, they leave. Hoda's fingers tightened subtly around the arm of her chair. Her smile stayed in place, but thinner now. A lot of people watching, she said delicately, still feel a real affection for the royal family, for the Queen's legacy, for example. Do you understand why some struggle when they hear you speak about the institution with such intensity? Meghan's eyes flashed. Intensity is the word people use when a woman refuses to shrink, she said. I'm not here to help them manage their nostalgia. The shift in the room was immediate. The warm set no longer felt cozy. It felt airless. Hoda sensed it, the way only a veteran host could. A line had been crossed not by volume or anger, but by a slow, deliberate drip of contempt. She swallowed, then smiled for the camera. All right, she said, a touch firmer. We're just getting started. After the break, we'll talk about motherhood, privacy, and what Meghan says people still misunderstand about her life in America. Meghan settled back, arms loosely crossed, expression unreadable. Good, she murmured, which the microphones caught. Maybe they'll finally listen. The tully light went dark. The producer called, Work clear! But nothing in the room felt clear. Not yet. When cameras lit up again, Hoda's practiced bright smile returned, though it didn't reach her eyes. She shifted in her armchair, grounding herself. Welcome back, she said warmly. We're here with Meghan Markle, having a very open conversation about life, change, and everything in between. The camera cut to Meghan. She wasn't smiling. Her posture was elegant, but her jaw was tight, her expression controlled and faintly impatient. Hoda inhaled. Time to try again. Meghan, she said, before the break, you talked about leaving a system you found harmful. I want to ask something connected to that. She paused. Motherhood, Meghan blinked, lifted her chin. What about it? How do you balance this enormous shift in your life while raising two little ones who didn't ask for any of the public attention or pressure? Meghan cut in almost instantly. Hoda, with respect, every parent raises their children under pressure. Mine just happens to be televised. Of course, Hoda said gently. But many parents watching want to understand how you manage that, especially with the attention surrounding your family. Meghan's lips tightened. I don't manage attention. Attention manages itself. People choose to obsess over us. Harry and I just live our lives. Hoda blinked once. Right, what I mean is, how do you protect your children's sense of? You think they don't have a sense of normality? Meghan demanded, her voice rising by a single, unmistakable notch. Enough, Meghan said, firm, sharp, loud enough to make a producer behind the camera sit up straighter. Hoda lifted her hands gently, palms open. I'm not. My children have a beautiful life. Meghan continued, overriding her, a private life, a grounded life. And frankly, I'm tired of this implication that, because their father was born into something, they're somehow forever prisoners to it. That's not what I'm saying. Hoda tried again, but she was already losing the space. Meghan leaned forward, her hand slicing the air as she spoke. People project so much onto them, onto us. And I refuse to participate in this narrative that my family owes the world something because of bloodlines. I will not. Hoda opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She could feel the interview slipping into a territory she hadn't intended. She softened her posture, regrouping. All right, she said gently, let's approach this from another angle. Many viewers admire your advocacy work, your voice on mental health, women's rights, but some also wonder. She inhaled a careful breath. How do you differentiate between your public stance and your private life? Meghan didn't pause. I don't, she said bluntly. I'm one person, not a brand. I don't owe the world two versions of myself. The Hoda tilted her head. That sounds exhausting. Meghan smirked. It's not exhausting if you're authentic from the start. The jab lingered in the air like a perfume that burned instead of soothed. The subtext was unmistakable. Hoda stayed steady. Some critics. Meghan sighed dramatically, leaning back. Critics. Of course, we love critics now. I'm just quoting what people have said. Hoda replied softly. Yes, critics always have something to say. Meghan continued, waving a dismissive hand. They want me to be quiet, to shrink, to disappear. But she leaned forward, gaze locking onto Hoda with theatrical precision. I will not disappear. The air thickened. Even the temperature felt different. Hoda calmly crossed her hands over her knee. Meghan, I think what people want is clarity. Sometimes your interviews over the years have sounded contradictory, and people struggle to understand how your story has evolved. Meghan's eyes widened, sharp, insulted, contradictory. It's just what some have said. Hoda answered softly. No, Meghan said firmly. What they're doing is picking apart my trauma for entertainment. And I'm expected to stand here and justify how healing works, how growth works, how surviving something shifts your perspective over time. Hoda felt the weight of that. Still, she kept her tone gentle. I hear you. Truly, I just want to give you space to express it in your own words. Meghan scoffed. Space? Hoda, this is an interview. You're not giving me space. You're asking me to relive pain on command. Hoda's mouth tightened for a beat before she managed a steady smile. We don't have to discuss anything that makes you uncomfortable. Oh, I'm not uncomfortable. Meghan tilted her head, her tone dipped in frost. I'm annoyed. A silence fell so sharp it felt like a physical drop in the room's air pressure. Even the crew froze in place. Hoda took a breath. She'd handled difficult guests before. Politicians mid-scandal, celebrities after public meltdowns, CEOs cornered by accountability. But this was different. Meghan wasn't reacting to questions. She was reacting to something internal, something simmering beneath the surface. Choosing her next words like a technician diffusing a bomb, Hoda offered, let's try something lighter. Your life in California, your home, your routines. What brings you joy these days? Meghan blinked, surprised, not pleasantly. What brings me joy? She repeated, as if the question itself were offensive. Is that the best we can do? Hoda's stomach dropped. What do you mean? She asked carefully. This isn't an audition for a lifestyle magazine. Meghan replied sharply. I'm not here to talk about smoothie bowls and morning routines. I wasn't implying. If you want a fluff interview. Meghan continued, slicing through the air with her words. Then ask someone else to sit here. I don't do fluff. This time Hoda couldn't hide the hurt. She sat back slowly, folding her hands in her lap. The shift was tiny but revealing, and Meghan noticed. Yet she didn't stop. If we're going to have a conversation, Meghan said coolly, let's have one with substance. Not this surface-level curiosity you save for celebrity segments. Hoda exhaled shakily. That wasn't my intent. Well, Meghan replied, content doesn't erase impact. The line hit Hoda like a slap. Everyone felt it. The crew, the producers, even the lighting tech perched on the ladder. The cameras kept rolling, but the real moment was happening between breaths, between unspoken disappointments. Hoda looked at Meghan, the exhaustion visible now beneath her professionalism. Meghan, she asked quietly, why does everything I ask feel like an attack to you? Meghan tilted her head. Maybe because I've learned interviews are rarely what they claim to be. Hoda's face dimmed, hurt, but controlled. Well, she said softly, I'd like to believe this one is. Meghan didn't respond. She just crossed her arms and stared forward, ready for the next question, like it was another battle she'd already prepared to win. And for the first time in her career, Hoda wondered if she was interviewing someone who didn't actually want to be understood. The tension was no longer rising. It was thick, rolling, inevitable. And the worst part, they still had 2 segments left. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted, palpably, dangerously, undeniably. Producers whispered frantically from behind the cameras, their hushed voices slicing through the thickening tension. A lighting tech nudged another crew member, mouthing, is she serious right now? The studio felt compressed, as if even the air was afraid to move too boldly. Still, the show had to go on. Hoda inhaled slowly, grounding herself against the pressure tightening from every direction. She adjusted the microphone, clipped neatly to her blouse, sat up straighter, and pulled a warm, almost motherly expression back onto her face, a mask built from decades of professionalism. Meghan, she began softly, I want to give you space to tell your story in your own way, so let me ask something a little more open-ended. Meghan didn't blink. Go ahead. Hoda nodded gently, trying to keep the energy tethered. What do you feel the world misunderstands most about you? Meghan tilted her head back slightly. It was hard to tell if she was contemplating the question or merely irritated by it. When she finally answered, her voice came out smooth, confident, and nearly rehearsed. People misunderstand everything about me, she said. My choices, my voice, my marriage, my motherhood, my purpose. She waved a dismissive hand. They create a version of me that's easier to tear apart. That sounds painful. Hoda offered softly. It's not painful. Meghan snapped back, quick and sharp. It's predictable. The tone made Hoda flinch ever so slightly, but she kept her posture composed. She had interviewed war survivors, volatile politicians, athletes fresh from scandal. But this was different. This was personal in a way she couldn't quite explain. All right, she continued gently. Let's talk about your marriage to Prince Harry. How would you say the two of you support each other through the pressure and scrutiny? Meghan's lips curled, less a smile and more a warning. People are obsessed with our marriage. They treat us like characters in a show instead of human beings. And honestly, I'm tired of explaining our reality to people who have no actual interest in understanding it. I understand that, Hoda said, but many of our viewers admire your relationship and are curious about. You keep saying curious? Meghan cut in sharply. Curiosity isn't an excuse to pry. Hoda blinked. I didn't mean it as prying. You did, Meghan said. You just packaged it with a smile. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crew. Hoda felt her face fall, just for a breath, before she straightened again. Let's move on, she said in a calm, controlled tone. Could you share what life in California has offered you? What feels different or freeing for you there? Meghan sighed dramatically. Hoda, California isn't a metaphor for healing or rebirth. It's just where we live. The sun shines. Harry likes the outdoors, the kids laugh. I don't need to romanticize it for morning television. I wasn't asking for a romanticized version, Hoda replied. Just a personal one. Well, Meghan said coolly, I'm giving you the truth. If that's not compelling enough, that's not my problem. Hoda kept her expression gracious, but the strain showed now in the tightness around her eyes. Okay, she said slowly. Let me ask something from a different angle. Many people see you as an advocate for women. Is there a message you want young women watching to take away from your journey? Meghan shifted, looking more irritated than thoughtful. I think women should stop trying so hard to please everyone, especially in interviews where the questions are designed to box them in. The implication hung heavy. Meghan, Hoda said quietly, I'm not trying to box you in. I'm trying to have a meaningful conversation, and I'm trying to avoid cliché sound bites. Meghan replied. Hoda exhaled, patient but fraying. There's usually a middle ground. There usually isn't. By now, the crew knew exactly what was happening. Meghan wasn't resisting specific questions. She was resisting the interview itself. Still, Hoda pressed on. Let's talk about family, she said gently. If you're comfortable. Meghan laughed, a short, humorless burst. You just won't let that go, will you? Hoda froze. What do you mean? You keep circling back to my family. It's transparent, and frankly boring. Hoda felt heat rise to her cheeks. I ask because people are invested in your story. Well, Meghan replied coldly, maybe they shouldn't be. A stunned silence followed. Hoda's voice softened to a whisper. Meghan, why are you here today? The question landed like a stone dropped into deep water. What? Meghan blinked. I'm asking sincerely, Hoda said. Because it feels like you don't want to be here. Meghan's expression hardened instantly. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I needed to perform gratitude for being invited into a room with beige furniture and polite questions. Someone behind the cameras whispered, Oh my God. Hoda stayed steady, though visibly hurt. All right, she said quietly. Let's take one last question. Fine. You've talked about feeling misunderstood, silenced, misrepresented. But Meghan, do you think, even a little, that some of that comes from moments like this, when people try to give you space, and instead of connecting, you push them away? Meghan's eyes hardened. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a cold, controlled whisper. And the tension snapped into something electric, dangerous, and irreversible. No, Hoda, Meghan said coldly. Moments like this are exactly why I protect myself. Hoda nodded slowly, lips pressed tightly together. I see, she murmured. In that instant the studio changed. It no longer felt like a warm, softly lit interview set. It felt like a battlefield. One side held composure, the other held confrontation. Hoda Kotb, America's comforting morning show soul, sat facing a guest who had no interest in comfort, warmth, or conversation, and Meghan Markle, rigid, defiant, utterly unimpressed, had no idea just how close she was to pushing Hoda past the point of restraint. The explosion was coming, and it would not be quiet. The air thickened. The cameras seemed to hum louder. Producers stood frozen behind the monitors, holding their headsets in tight white, knuckled grips as though bracing for impact. Every crew member sensed it. The tension had gone from uncomfortable to dangerous. Meghan sat back in her chair, arms folded, chin raised, radiating an icy confidence that made everyone else instinctively shrink. Hoda, meanwhile, held herself together through sheer professionalism, a thin thread that frayed more with each passing second. But she kept trying. She always tried. Hoda cleared her throat gently. Meghan, let's reset for a moment, she said calmly. I want us to finish this conversation in a way that makes you comfortable. Meghan cut in sharply. Is that what you mean? Hoda blinked. That's not what I'm saying. Oh, please? Meghan scoffed. Everything here is about making the interviewer look composed and gracious. Meanwhile, I'm expected to smile and swallow questions that are frankly beneath me. Hoda's lips parted, stunned into silence. Off to the side, Savannah Guthrie and Tom Lummis exchanged wide-eyed looks. Someone in the control room whispered, Is she serious? On morning television. Hoda inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Meghan, she said gently, I'm genuinely trying to have a respectful, human conversation with you. But you keep pushing back at everything I ask. Because your questions lack substance. Meghan snapped. You want vulnerability without risk, honesty without depth, a headline without accountability. The words hit Hoda hard, but she didn't lash out. Not yet. Instead, she leaned forward, hands clasped carefully. Okay, she said softly. Then let me ask something meaningful. Meghan raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. Hoda held her gaze, a calm, heartbreakingly sincere expression. Are you happy, Meghan? She asked quietly. Truly. The question landed like a thunderclap. For the briefest moment, something flickered across Meghan's face. Something unguarded, soft, almost exposed. But it vanished instantly behind a wall of indignation. What kind of question is that? She demanded. Do you think I'm some broken woman waiting for validation? No. Hoda replied gently. But I think sometimes people fight so hard to be understood that they forget to understand themselves. Meghan's eyes sharpened, dangerous. You're projecting? She hissed. Hoda flinched. The crew collectively exhaled, stunned. Slowly, Hoda straightened in her chair. The warmth in her expression faded. Not completely, but enough to electrify the room. Meghan, she said, voice firm but controlled, this is not how we treat people on this show. Not guests, not viewers, not anyone. Oh, spare me? Meghan scoffed. I don't need the moral lecture. Hoda drew a steady breath. That was it. The thread snapped. She set her shoulders back, exhaled through her nose, and spoke with a clarity that sliced through the air. You know what? She said quietly. No, we're not doing this anymore. Meghan blinked. Excuse me. Hoda continued, calm but resolute. I invited you here to share your voice, your story. But instead you've treated every question as an attack. You've dismissed the viewers. You've insulted the show. And you've spoken to me with an unkindness I will not accept. Meghan jolted forward. I'm setting boundaries. You should respect that. There's a difference, Hoda said softly, between boundaries and hostility. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Then Hoda turned slightly toward the camera, something she almost never did mid-interview. Out of respect for our viewers, she said clearly, out of respect for this platform, we are going to end the interview here. Meghan sat up straighter, eyes blazing. You're ending it. No, Meghan, Hoda replied without flinching. I'm asking you to step out. The room exploded. Not with noise, but with a powerful shift of energy that felt physical. You're kicking me off your show, Meghan demanded. Yes, Hoda said softly, because kindness matters, respect matters, and this isn't that. Meghan pushed back her chair, shaking with anger. This is unbelievable, she muttered, grabbing her bag. This whole interview was a mistake. Hoda didn't argue. She simply nodded once, dignified, composed, heartbroken, as Meghan Markle stormed out, heels striking the studio floor in furious echoing beats. The cameras cut. The crew exhaled all at once. Hoda lowered her head for a moment. Then she looked up, steady and calm. To our viewers, she said quietly, we'll be back. Fade out.